Discover the incredible transformation. Lonely mountain man exposes heartwarming secret of a woman. In the depths of the Appalachian Mountains, where the air is crisp and the mornings sing with the harmony of nature, Hank lived with a solitude that was both his sanctuary and his prison. At 45, his beard was as wild as the terrain, a reflection of the rugged peaks that surrounded him. His hands were calloused from years of labor, tales of heartache etched into every line on his skin. For years, he had retreated into isolation, away from the bustling city life and the ache of betrayal that tore his family apart. It was the only way he thought he could survive the pain. But as winter's grip loosened and spring unfurled its green fingers, everything shifted. Enter Lily, a compassionate local nurse, a beacon of hope in the community. With a heart full of warmth, she made it her mission to care for the elderly and bring the townsfolk together. On a chilly morning, 2 steaming cups of coffee sat in front of them as they shared stories. Hank spoke of his struggles against nature, of days spent battling storms, while Lily shared her ambitions of uplifting the community that gave her purpose. Their slow conversation felt like a bridge being built, a connection Hank hadn't expected. Before long, the whispers of Hank's past began to weave through the community like smoke from a dying fire. Murmurs turned into rumors. He was painted as a monster rather than the kind-hearted soul he was revealing to Lily. Some said he'd hurt those closest to him. Others warned their children to steer clear of the isolated mountain man. With each passing day, Hank felt the weight of old mistakes crashing back down on him, the shadows of fear and anger in the townsfolk thickening like the fog that rolled over the mountains. Just when things felt hopeless, a sudden storm descended, uprooting trees and ripping roofs from homes. The chaos stirred something deep inside Hank, an inner resolve that he had buried under layers of regret. When the storm settled, he found himself at the heart of a community rallying to help one another. He organized efforts to rebuild, wielding his carpentry skills like a warrior's shield, generations of knowledge flowing through him. As Hank lifted walls and repaired chaos, he discovered that the storm also tore open the wounds of his past. The very source of the cruel rumors confronted him. In that raw moment, he stood tall, heart racing, fighting tears. He sought forgiveness and understanding, the air thick with unspoken words. Would this lead to reconciliation, or would the community remain fractured by fear? Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As Hank stood among his neighbors, the need for redemption loomed larger than ever. The town watched him with wary eyes, grappling with their perceptions of the man he could be. The repairs he made became a metaphor for the healing they all needed. With the storm's destruction across the landscape, Hank knew his journey was just beginning. Could he mend the bonds that were shattered? Would forgiveness bridge the gap of broken trust? As the sun peeked through the clouds, a flicker of hope ignited in their hearts. What lay ahead was uncertain, but one truth remained clear: Hank's quest for peace was far from over. With the morning sun casting golden rays over the freshly rebuilt homes, Hank felt a mixture of exhaustion and relief. The air was thick with the scent of sawdust and fresh paint, but beyond that, hope was palpable. The townspeople, once guarded, now shared hesitant smiles and nods of acknowledgement. A shift had occurred, but trust, he knew, was built over time. Lily had become a constant presence beside him, her laughter dancing in the air as they worked side by side. She would joke about how Hank's favorite tool was whatever made the loudest noise. The lightness in her demeanor was a balm to his beaten-down spirit. One afternoon, as they rested on a fallen log, Lily shared her vision for the town: a community garden. She spoke passionately about growing fresh produce and how it could unite the families. Hank could see it then, a seedling idea taking root. But the conversations around town hadn't completely vanished. Glances from those who still held on to the old stories lingered. A few folk still whispered among themselves, their words sharp enough to cut through the soft hum of a busy afternoon. It was as if the storm's winds hadn't just tossed around the roofs but also left debris of doubt in hearts. Determined to break down the remaining barriers, Hank approached the town hall meeting called for that Thursday evening. The place was buzzing with expectant faces. He felt a flicker of fear mixed with a desperate hope. Standing before the crowd, he cleared his throat. "I know there are stories about me," he started, his voice steady but vulnerable. "Some true, some not. But what I know is this town is worth fighting for. I'm here to show you who I really am." He paused, letting the weight of his words resonate. Shadows flitted across faces, unsure, but the silence held promise. To his surprise, a familiar face broke the tension. Maggie, the schoolteacher who had once been his greatest ally but had backed away when the rumor started. She stood and, with shaking hands, shared her own past struggles. Her voice was timid yet powerful. "Sometimes, we fear what we don't understand. I want to help be part of the healing," she announced. A ripple of murmurs swept through the crowd, slowly transforming into supportive murmurs. As the discussions unfolded, Hank felt something shift inside him. Every shared experience, every expression of vulnerability was stitching them together. It was messy, just like life. Lily looked on, her eyes bright with encouragement, as she joined in, suggesting ideas on how they could work together. The garden project transformed from just a vision to a shared mission, and the townsfolk warmed to the idea. By the end of the meeting, a plan had formed. A weekend event was set for the garden's groundbreaking, an occasion for everyone to contribute, share meals, and build something beautiful together. Hank felt a swell of joy. For the first time in years, he sensed belonging. As the crowd began to disperse, Hank lingered, watching folks chat and smile amidst the debris of old grudges beginning to shift. His heart pounded, but it wasn't fear, it was anticipation, a strong belief that the community's wounds could heal. Yet in the back of his mind, he knew the true test was still to come. For all that had been achieved, the real danger lay in what could happen when the past would confront him once more. Hank had no idea that someone from his past, bearing darkness tucked away and ready to expose him, was now returning. Would he be able to withstand the storm that was bound to come? Lily sensed the tension within him and smiled slightly. "Just take it a day at a time," she said gently, her warmth wrapping around him like a comforting blanket. But Hank knew that the journey ahead wouldn't be easy. He could feel the road to redemption stretching onward, full of twists, turns, and perhaps even more storms to weather. What awaited him was still uncertain, yet he wouldn't give up. The weekend approached quicker than Hank anticipated. The town buzzed with excitement, and as he walked through Main Street, the vibrant chatter hung thick in the air. Banners fluttered from the storefronts, celebrating the upcoming groundbreaking of the community garden. Hank's heart swelled with pride at the sight. For so long, he felt on the outside, but now, he was stepping into something bigger than himself. Lily had taken charge of organizing the event, her energy infectious. They met early Saturday morning to prepare, the sun peeking over the horizon, illuminating the path like a promise. Hank noticed she had a knack for making everyone feel included, and that morning, she reached out to a pair of shy kids lingering at the edge of the yard. "Hey, you two. Want to help us plant some seeds? It's like magic seeing them grow," she called with a welcoming smile. They stepped forward, eyes wide with curiosity, and Hank could see their uncertainty melt away under her warmth. As people gathered, Hank felt an exhilarating mix of hope and nerves churn in his stomach. The crowd grew, filling the once quiet town square with laughter and chatter. Old faces mixed with new ones. Friends and strangers, working together. There were tables set up with homemade pies and jars of jam, as well as a little lemonade stand. Hank grabbed a glass, needing the sweetness to distract him from the shadows that lingered in his heart. By noon, they commenced the dedication ceremony. Hank stood beside Lily, holding a shovel engraved with the words, "Together we grow." She beamed at him, her enthusiasm lighting up his darker thoughts. This was it. The moment they'd been waiting for. He stepped forward, his voice steady as he addressed the crowd. This garden is not just about plants. It's about us, coming together, supporting one another. Let us grow our community as we grow these seeds. Applause erupted, and for a moment, the remnants of his past faded. With each shovel filled with dirt, with each seed planted in their new home, he felt himself becoming lighter. Each person who joined in, whether young or old, breathing life into the soil brought a renewed sense of connection. But as they laughed, shared lunch, and set future plans into motion, Hank still felt a prickling sensation on the back of his neck. He couldn't shake off the feeling that someone was watching him. Maybe it was just his imagination running wild, but deep down he knew the threat was real. Memories of old mistakes clung like fog on a cold morning. Later in the day, as the sun dipped lower on the horizon, Hank found himself alone near the edge of the garden, inhaling the earthy scent of fresh tilled soil and flowers that seemed to bloom with life. Lily approached, her brows slightly furrowed. "Hank?" she asked softly, her voice like a soothing balm. Her concern was clear and familiar. It stung but also grounded him. "It's just. I feel like something is lurking around. It's hard to shake off." Before she could respond, a familiar figure appeared at the entrance of the garden, and Hank's heart dropped. It was Jonah, a man from his past, someone he never thought would set foot in town again. Jonah looked different, but that same cold edge of trouble was still present in his eyes. Hank's pulse quickened, and dread settled deep in his gut as Jonah walked toward them, a smirk playing across his lips. He called out cheerily, "Well, isn't this a surprise? A garden party without me?" Lily looked at Hank, her expression shifting from concern to alarm. The mood around them grew tense as townsfolk stopped their chatter, turning to stare. Hank could almost hear the words of warning echoing in his mind. This was the storm he had feared. Would he be able to face the truth his past had brought back into his life? As Jonah stepped further into the gathering crowd, Hank's fists clenched, and the laughter of that beautiful day hung in the air like a fragile promise. Would this celebration of unity survive the weight of his secrets? Hank's throat tightened as he saw Jonah inch closer, the vibrant atmosphere around them deflating like a balloon losing air. People whispered among themselves, their eyes darting between Jonah and Hank, uncertainty written across their faces. It felt like a spotlight had swung in Hank's direction, illuminating the shadows he thought he'd left behind. "Just wanted to see the fantastic progress you've made," Jonah announced, his voice dripped with sarcasm. "A garden? How quaint." Hank shifted his weight, battling the urge to step forward and confront this unwelcome visitor. Instead, he lingered in silence, the laughter from earlier echoing in his ears, dulling, fading. The sun dipped lower, leaving a palette of oranges and purples overhead, but the warmth felt far away. Lily stood beside him, her small hand resting on his arm. "Hank," she spoke softly, her eyes filled with worry. "Do you want me to handle this?" "No," Hank replied, forcing a smile for her, though dread churned within him. He had to be the one to face this. If he ran, he'd always be looking over his shoulder. Jonah approached with that same smirk, a predator circling its prey. "I see you've got quite the little community here. Rediscovered your love for gardening, have we?" Jonah's tone turned sinister. "I'd hate for anything to ruin your happy little world." With every mocking word, Hank felt a flicker of anger ignite. He remembered the betrayal, the fallout of their last encounter. It hadn't just cost him, it had affected so many innocent lives. But today was different, he wasn't that same fearful person anymore. Not after all they'd accomplished and built. Hank took a step forward, looking into Jonah's eyes, trying to read what lay behind his deceitful grin. "What do you want, Jonah? This isn't your place anymore." The crowd remained silent, their breaths held as his challenge rang out. Jonah chuckled, feigning nonchalance, but Hank caught a flash of annoyance in his gaze. "Oh, I just wanted to reconnect. We used to be friends, right? before you decided to be the hero of this little town. The murmurs of concern around them grew louder. The warmth of community that had enveloped Hank seemed to temper its edges with fear. Enough, Hank said, his voice carrying authority now. You're here to stir trouble. Go back to wherever you came from, and leave us alone. Jonah's face darkened for a moment. You know, Hank, you might think you've changed, but deep down, you're still that scared kid hiding behind his mistakes. His parting shot hung in the air heavy, igniting Hank's past fears all over again. But before Hank could respond, the townspeople began to gather around them, forming a protective barrier. Hank felt their support, a rush of warmth filling him. He looked at Lily, who nodded, urging him silently to stand tall. This isn't just my garden, he said, raising his voice to address the crowd that swelled with solidarity. It's our garden. And it represents so much more than just a place to plant seeds. It's a testament to resilience, to overcoming past shadows. As his words filled the air, a palpable shift took place. Jonah's confidence waned, replaced by uncertainty as he realized that this community wasn't just a facade. They had each other's backs, united against his looming threat. Let this garden remind us of the new beginnings we can create, Hank continued, his heart pounding but fueled by the strength of those around him. Together, we can rise above our past. Jonah hesitated, a storm of emotions crossing his face before resignation settled in. He smiled again, but this time, it felt forced, bitter. Enjoy your little fairy tale, Hank. But remember, shadows don't disappear, they just wait for their moment to return. With one last look, Jonah turned and walked away, the tension dissipating like fog under the sun's warm embrace. Breathing a sigh of relief, Hank felt the weight lift. For the first time, he really was part of this community. The laughter began to rise again, like a flood breaking free. They rebuilt their joy with every smile and every cheer, the garden now. More than just plants in the soil. But as Hank engaged with the crowd, shadows still lurked at the corners of his mind. Jonah had left a seed of doubt. Would the scars of his past really allow him to move forward? As laughter erupted once more, Hank glanced around, searching for solace. Would Jonah stay away, or had this confrontation only been the first chapter in a much darker story? Hank took a deep breath, allowing the laughter and chatter of his friends and neighbors to wash over him. It felt good, almost euphoric, to be reminded of what they'd built together. Still, Jonah's words nagged at him. Shadows don't just vanish. They linger, waiting for the right moment to cast their gloom over the light. Seeking comfort, he turned to Lily, who was chatting with Mrs. Thompson as they admired the blooming flowers. It's beautiful, isn't it? Lily said, her eyes bright with excitement. You really did it, Hank. Yeah, he murmured, forcing a smile as he watched her. It's good to see everyone enjoying it. But as Hank scanned the crowd, he caught a glimpse of Jonah retreating. The other man's backstory was shrouded in darkness, a past that had intertwined with Hank's in the worst ways possible. Would he really just let it go? A flare of unease struck Hank. He couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't the end. Hey, I was thinking. Lily tugged on his sleeve, pulling him from his thoughts. What if we did a community picnic here next week? We could invite everyone. It'd be perfect to celebrate the garden. Hank caught her infectious excitement. A picnic sounded wonderful, a way to strengthen their bonds further, but he hesitated. What if Jonah shows up? What if he tries to ruin it? Lily shook her head, holding his gaze steadfastly. Hank, you're stronger now. We're stronger. If he comes back, we'll deal with it. Together. The conviction in her voice made his heart swell. You're right, he said. We'll make it a big festival. No one can take what we've created from us. The idea sparked something inside him. They would hold the picnic, a declaration of unity against any lingering dark cloud. The laughter, the warmth of togetherness, would overshadow any threat Jonah posed. Hank turned to Lily, determination creeping into his voice. Let us plan it. We'll create something beautiful. As they discussed ideas, the crowd began to come together, pooling their resources and talents to ensure the picnic would be memorable. Kids were excitedly drawing posters, while adults brainstormed recipes and games. For the first time, Hank felt that anxiety fade to the background. Hope was ushering in a new era. But as the sun dipped below the horizon, bathing them in gold and shadow, Hank stole a glance around, lingering on the edges of the festival preparation. Not everyone seemed as enthusiastic. Martin, a quiet neighbor, stood off to the side, his brow furrowed in thought. The man had always been reticent, a gentle soul who rarely spoke, but Hank sensed a conflict in him. Martin, Hank called, approaching him. Are you okay? You look worried. Martin shifted uncomfortably, rubbing the back of his neck. I just have a bad feeling about Jonah. I don't know. Something about this doesn't sit right with me. Hank's heart sank. Doubt flooded back in, taunting him. What if Martin was right? What if Jonah really was lurking, ready to pounce on their celebration? Just as those thoughts gripped Hank again, a rustle behind them drew his attention. He turned, and his blood ran cold as he saw a silhouette standing beyond the garden gate. It was Jonah, lurking in the shadows, watching them. Real fear anchored Hank in place. Would the festival be a sanctuary, or was it about to become a battleground? He had a choice to make, and time was running out. Get ready, he whispered to Martin, dread pooling in his gut. We might have to protect what's ours sooner than we thought. Hank's heart raced as he studied Jonah's silhouette, the fading sunlight casting long shadows across the garden. The laughter and joy that had moments ago filled the air now felt distant, overshadowed by a chilling sense of foreboding. Do you think he's just here to watch? Martin murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. Hank shook his head. No. He's calculating. He always was. The memories of Jonah's unpredictable anger, the chaos it brought, forced Hank to swallow hard. This wasn't just a deterrent to their picnic, it felt like a challenge. Lily, with her ever-optimistic spirit, had already started gathering supplies for the festival, oblivious to the darkness lurking just outside their joyful space. Hank felt a knot forming in his chest. We need to warn everyone, he said urgently, scanning the gathering crowd. If Jonah's planning something. Martin nodded, his brow still furrowed. But how? We can't just announce it. We'd cause a panic. Hank closed his eyes briefly, trying to piece together a plan. He didn't want to ruin their festival before it even began, but he knew the threat was real. Let us keep an eye on him first. If he makes a move, we act. But we won't let fear spoil the day. Okay, Martin braced himself, glancing nervously back at Jonah. As Hank turned to the crowd, he felt a surge of determination. He walked towards Lily, who was now helping a group of kids with their handmade posters. Lily, he said, leaning close, we've got a situation. Jonah's here. Her smile faded, replaced by concern. What? Are you sure? I thought he left. Yeah, well, he's lurking. We need to keep this festival going, but we also need to be ready in case he tries something. Lily's eyes never left Hank's face, reading the gravity of his words. So, we keep it normal. More people means more strength, right? Whatever happens, we're together. Hank nodded, feeling the weight of that unity. Right. Let us add more activities. Make it a celebration no one will forget. They quickly shifted into action, and soon the energy in the garden transformed. Tunes spilled from portable speakers, laughter resonated from every corner, and the smell of homemade pies filled the air. The atmosphere was alive, and Hank felt his heart swell with pride. The beauty of their community shone brighter than Jonah's darkness. But even amidst the joy, Hank remained vigilant. Every time he glanced toward the gate, he spotted Jonah, standing still, watching. A tight band of anxiety wrapped around his chest. Hours passed, and the sun sank lower, painting the sky a deep orange. Kids ran around, parents chatted, and for a moment, Hank almost forgot the threat looming just outside. Then a sudden commotion erupted near the entrance. Hank and Lily exchanged uneasy glances. He rushed to the source of the noise, fear creeping back into his thoughts. At the gate, a group of residents stood pointing. "He's here. Jonah!" One of them shouted, panic slicing through the air like a knife. Hank clenched his fists. The time for courage was now. Would they confront Jonah together, or would they cower in fear? As faces turned pale and whispers filled the garden, he took a deep breath, preparing to address the crowd. But all he could think was, what if Jonah really did have a plan? With the atmosphere charged and the stakes heightened, he gathered their neighbors, steeling himself for what was about to unfold. Would this festival become their shield or their battleground? The air held its breath as Hank prepared to take the stand, ready to defend everything they had built. Hank stepped to the front of the gathering crowd, adrenaline coursing through him. The murmurs and glances exchanged among the residents were thick with uncertainty. He could feel their fear, a shared pulse quickened by Jonah's presence. It wasn't just about the festival anymore, it was a fight for their very community. "Everyone!" Hank shouted, raising his voice to cut through the whispering chaos. He focused on the faces that once looked so joyful around the garden. "Listen up. Jonah is here, but we don't need to be afraid. We've worked hard to build this community, to create something beautiful together." A couple of parents clutched their children tighter, confusion dancing in their eyes. Hank's heart hammered louder than ever, he needed to give them strength. "Together, we're stronger than any threat. Let us keep celebrating and show Jonah that we won't be intimidated." Martin stepped up beside him, igniting a flicker of confidence in Hank's heart. "Hank's right. Let us not let this ruin the spirit of the day," he called, determination burning in his eyes. Lily joined them, hands on her hips, radiant as ever, even amidst the tension. "We're all here for a reason. That's what today is about: family, friends, and community." Her voice rang out like a bell, cutting through the palpable fear. The crowd shifted, uncertainty morphing into defiance. Slowly, heads nodded, and the frightened whispers dimmed. But as Hank looked toward the gate, Jonah remained, an ominous figure. He hadn't moved, still casting his shadow over their celebration. Just then, the festival's music swelled, an upbeat tune that seemed to throw a challenge at the cool evening air. Hank felt the energy ripple through the crowd, sparking something fierce. "All right, everyone. Let us dance. Show Jonah what this festival really means," Hank urged, rallying the community as he clapped his hands to the rhythm. He stepped into the fray, pulling a little girl from her mother's side to join him. Soon, laughter echoed, and footfalls thumped against the earth, kicking up dust as they danced. Lily smiled, her spirit contagious, as she reached out to Martin, who hesitated a moment before accepting her hand. They joined Hank, and soon others followed. The music became a shield against the threat looming outside. But in the midst of movement and camaraderie, Hank couldn't shake the feeling that Jonah was waiting for the right moment. What was he planning? Would their joy be enough to deter him? As the dance circle expanded, Hank glanced back at Jonah, who finally shifted his expression, unreadable yet hauntingly still. The unfamiliar tension in the air buzzed and crackled, verses of hope muddled with anxiety. Just then, a sudden loud crack split the evening, a sound so sharp it cut through the music and laughter. Hank's heart dropped. It wasn't just a pop from the fire pit. Everyone turned, eyes wide, and the vibrant energy of the festival abruptly fell silent. What was that? Someone whispered. Hank swallowed hard, dread pooling in his stomach. Because now, all he could think was that Jonah's plan wasn't over yet. A new fear began to thrum in his chest. What if the celebration was really just a prelude to something much darker? With the crowd's quiet unease settling like a heavy blanket, Hank knew he had to act quickly. Would his courage and their unity be enough to face whatever was coming next? The moment weighed heavily as uncertainty loomed in the air, and Hank prepared himself for the truth that was about to unfold. The wind shifted, aggressively rustling the leaves of the nearby trees. Hank took a step closer to the crowd, his chest rising and falling rapidly. The sounds of laughter had vanished, replaced by anxious whispers and shifting feet. He could feel the weight of their fear, heavy and tangible in the air. "Please, everyone," Hank said, his voice steadier now, though it shook at the edges. "Let us not panic. Let's stay together." He scanned the faces, desperate for a sign of strength. The little girl he had invited to dance clung tightly to her mother's leg. She looked up at Hank with wide, confused eyes. That look pierced through his defiance like a bolt of lightning. As if sensing the desperation, the music resumed, but it felt strained, the upbeat rhythm now a reminder of the lurking danger. Hank hesitated for just a moment, but then he clapped his hands again, louder this time. "Let us keep the festival alive. We have each other, that's what matters." Martin stepped up, eyes darting between the horizon and Hank. "We've worked too hard to let fear take this away from us. We're a community. Let us celebrate that." Encouraged by Martin's words, some people began to resume dancing, albeit tentatively. The energy in the air transformed slowly, but it was still shaky and unsteady. He could see Lily moving toward the front, her courage igniting in the same way the festival's lanterns flickered. "Come on, folks. Dance with us," she shouted, her voice blazing bright against the night. Her smile was infectious, and one by one, people began to join in. They swayed gently at first, then grew bolder, the circle around Hank expanding again. But the joyous resurgence felt precarious. Hank's heart tugged with dread as he glanced back towards Jonah. There was no smile on Jonah's face, only a hard, calculating stare. Whatever Jonah had planned, he was still waiting for the right moment. Then, from the far side of the garden, a couple of figures emerged, sending shockwaves of fear through the crowd. "Look!" someone shouted, pointing. Hank's heart dropped as he saw more of Jonah's followers approaching, their expressions dark and fortified by a strange determination. "Stay strong," Hank called, raising his hands as if to shield the community. "We can face whatever they throw at us." But then, a woman detached from the crowd, moving courageously toward the figures. It was Gretchen, the local baker known for her strawberry tarts and warm smile. She held a basket of baked goods in her hands. "You can't stop us, Jonah," she shouted. "We're not afraid of you." Hank felt a surge of hope. Gretchen's bravery became a spark, igniting a fire within others. More people stepped forward, courage replacing fear. "We stand together," someone yelled, echoing Gretchen's sentiments. The crowd roared in agreement, their voices blending into a beautiful symphony of determination. But Jonah's followers merely smirked, seemingly unfazed by the rising defiance. "This isn't over," one of them spat, and a chill settled over Hank's spine. As the tension hung thick, the harmony of the festival dimmed into an unsettling silence punctuated only by the rustling leaves. Hank took a deep breath, steadying himself. He had to lead them, to build a barrier not just of voices but of genuine unity. "What if, instead of cowering, we turn our backs to them and face our celebration together?" he asked, his voice resounding throughout the garden. "Let us keep dancing, keep singing, keep loving our community." The crowd murmured, uncertainty hanging in the air, but then he saw it a ripple of understanding as they all turned slightly, as if drawn together by invisible threads connecting their hearts. Was it possible? He held his breath, heart pounding, waiting for their response. Would they rise up as one? Would they keep their spirit alive in the face of Jonah's darkness? As the last notes of music started to fade away, anticipation thundered between the people. Would Hank's call to unity hold firm against whatever was to come? The tension felt unbearable as they stood at the brink of confrontation, and Hank's heart raced. What would happen next? Hank's heart raced like a wild stallion, thundering against his ribcage. He searched for any sign that the crowd would embrace his call, his voice trembling with hope. A moment stretched into eternity. Then, like a pair of stars igniting in the night sky, the first brave souls started to sway again. Lily was among them, her arms raised high, twirling with a joy that seemed to defy the darkness. Her laughter broke through the tension, bright and clear. "Dance with me!" she shouted, and her spirit was contagious. More eyes lit up, hesitation giving way to laughter and movement. The mood began to shift. As the music surged back to life, it wasn't just a sound anymore, it transformed into a heartbeat for the crowd. They stomped their feet, clapped their hands, and the festival started to swirl around them again, a collective rebellion against the looming threat. But just as joy lifted their spirits, Hank glanced again at Jonah's retinue. The menacing figures paused at the flowered edges of the garden, their shadows stretching long and ominous before them. There was an unsettling stillness about Jonah, a precision in his posture that hinted at waiting for the right moment to strike. "We need to make a stand." Martin's voice broke through, and Hank could see the determination etched on his face. "Let them know we're not afraid." A wave of agreement surged through the crowd, amplifying Hank's resolve. "Together!" Hank shouted, raising his arms toward the sky, and the crowd echoed back, "Together!" It was more than just a chant. It was a promise. They were in this as a family, a community. The earlier tension began to evaporate, replaced by a stubborn sense of unity. Yet, as the music wrapped around them in joyous celebration, a sound like thunder made Hank's heart drop. Jonah snapped his fingers, and the group shifted forward, positioning themselves in a menacing row. "This isn't a celebration, it's a distraction," he called, his voice sharp like a blade. "Friends." Jonah's tone twisted with false warmth, "You can't win by ignoring the reality around you." He gestured dramatically, pointing towards the path leading out of the garden. "Those who avoid the truth will only be left behind." Hank felt a shiver run through the crowd. Doubt crept back in, snaking its way through the once unified voices. Each person was confronted not just by Jonah's threats but by their own fears. What could they do against such ferocity? Then, Gretchen stepped forward again, her eyes ablaze with a fire that sparked through the crowd. "But hiding will never erase your pain. We will not crumble. With love, we can rise." The roar of the crowd surged. There was fear, yes, but it was mingled with something deeper, a bond formed through countless shared moments, laughter in the bakery, whispers in the market, the heartaches of life together. "Love!" Hank shouted, his voice raw with emotion. "That's what we have to fight back with." At that moment, he felt something shift within him, a release, a sense of purpose pushing against the tide of dread. It clawed at him and lifted him all at once. He wanted to hold on to that feeling, to let it fuel the fire inside him. He wasn't just a man facing a confrontation, he was someone who could lead a charge of light against darkness. The ground felt steady beneath his feet as Hank took a step toward Jonah, the air crackling with tension. "You can try to intimidate us, but we are rooted here together. We will not let fear dictate our festival." The crowd echoed his words, the sound rising above the tension, a chorus of collective strength. But could they truly face Jonah? Would love and unity be enough to protect them? Jonah's face twisted, revealing a blend of anger and disbelief. "We'll see how long that lasts," he yelled, and Hank knew the time had come. The moment of truth was approaching, and he could sense a storm gathering on the horizon. What would happen next? Could they hold their ground, or was more darkness looming? Hank's heart pounded, and the weight of the moment felt heavier than ever. The ground trembled with unspoken tension as Hank faced Jonah, the air thick with uncertainty. The crowd behind him swelled with energy, a tempest of emotions, but doubt surged in Hank's mind. Could they truly battle the darkness that Jonah represented? Together. Hank cried out again, his voice resonating through the festival. The townspeople echoed it like a chant, a powerful reminder that unity was their strongest weapon. But as Hank scanned their faces, those of hope, fear, and determination, he felt the weight of their collective trust resting on his shoulders. Jonah crossed his arms and laughed, an icy sound that sent chills through the joyous air. Unity. That's what you think will save you? He leaned closer, sneering. It won't last. You're one storm away from being scattered. But Hank remembered the storms they had just weathered together, the one that had galvanized the very community Jonah sought to shatter. You're wrong. Hank shot back, a fire igniting in his chest. We've suffered, we've learned, and we've rebuilt more than just houses. We've rebuilt trust, friendships, and a sense of belonging. With each step he took toward Jonah, Hank felt a surge of confidence. Others began to move alongside him, emboldened by his defiance. Martin locked eyes with him, nodding as if they could share the strength surging through each of them. I won't let you take that from us, Hank said, his tone steady, fueled by the collective heartbeat of his community. This garden is a representation of our resilience, not just against storms, but against forces like you. Jonah's expression twisted into something darker, anger boiling below his icy exterior. You think you know pain, Hank? You don't know the depths where betrayal can take you. You're just a coward hiding behind others. Those words stung, but Hank had faced that cowardice before. He glanced back at the crowd, no longer just spectators, they were participants, allies ready to stand firm. You don't understand the strength in vulnerability, he replied, meeting Jonah's gaze head-on. Admitting our fears has made us stronger. This community is my heart, and I will protect it at all costs. The crowd erupted into support. Cheers, applause, and shouts surrounded Hank like a protective shield. He could feel their energy amplifying. They were ready to stand up for one another, ready to defy Jonah's reign of fear. But Jonah glanced at his followers, a bead of sweat forming on his temple. You think this is just about you? You'll regret this, he hissed, but uncertainty seeped into his bravado. Enough. A voice rang out. It was Mrs. Thompson, her gray hair shining in the fading sunlight. She stepped forward, clutching her apron. We're tired of living in the shadows of fear. This garden isn't just dirt and seeds, it represents our life, our community. Her words stirred something in the crowd. Heads bobbed in agreement as more voices joined in, rising to meet Jonah's threats. Hank felt exhilaration rush through him. They were united, a tapestry woven with resilience and love. Lily took a step forward, her gaze fierce. This is our home. Strength is defined not by the absence of fear, but by our ability to confront it together. The energy shifted, solidifying like the very soil they had tilled. The heart of the community beat as one, drowning out Jonah's bluster. You're outnumbered, Jonah, Hank said firmly, feeling the surge of love and camaraderie. Leave now while you can, and spare us all the drama. Jonah looked around, doubt creeping into his eyes as more faces turned toward him, each one filled with steadfast determination. They were no longer just a town. They had become a family, fiercely protective of their shared dreams. But Jonah held his ground, a sneer still painted on his face. You think I'll back down? I won't let you erase my past. You'll pay for this. This garden, this moment, it won't last. The crowd moved closer together, a living wall of strength. You can't break our spirit, Jonah. Hank shouted above the din, his voice rising with conviction. You think shadows win? No. Light persists, and we shine as a community. We refuse to be divided. With that declaration, a collective cheer erupted, resounding like a thunderclap across the garden. The sound surged upward, igniting the last rays of sun to filter through the fading day. Jonah hesitated, caught in a tempest of uncertainty. For the first time, Hank saw the cracks in his facade. Leave now, Martin echoed, joining in with a hint of resolve. before you lose the last remnants of your dignity. The atmosphere sparked with strength, and nothing could have ever felt more right. One by one, the townsfolk stepped forward, expressing unwavering loyalty to their community, their roots. Jonah's bravado waned as he assessed his once power position eroding with every unified shout, each claim of belonging. "This isn't over," he yelled, taking a step back, but it rang hollow. With each retreating step, Hank felt the joy return, the relief flooding back in waves as Jonah finally turned and left the garden. Together, their voices cascaded, drowning out the dark echoes of the past. Dancing erupted once more, laughter floating into the night sky. Hank watched as his neighbors enveloped Lily in a whirl of joyous celebration, and he felt warmth flood over him, pouring from every corner of the community. The festival had turned into more than just a gathering, it was a declaration, a moment of transformation. They had confronted the darkness together, and for the first time, it felt as if hope truly flourished. As Hank gazed at the faces around him, tears of gratitude pooled in his eyes, and he smiled. They weren't just surviving the storms, they were thriving because of them. And that, he realized, was the true essence of community, a beautiful, resilient heart that would continue to beat, no matter what darkness lay ahead. And as the night carried on, enchanted under the shimmering stars, they danced, they laughed, and they celebrated forever entwined in their shared story of strength and hope. Now, if you felt that surge of joy, if Hank and his community inspired you, you need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support for more stories that uplift and impact lives. Don't wait not even one more second, leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help us reach hearts everywhere. And we'd love to hear from you. Comment your reactions and feelings about this ending. How did it touch you? What did you learn? Finally, take a step to spread the light. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this remarkable transformation. Remember, only true fans understand how important it is to support the channel through these actions.